What's going on? If you're new to the channel, my name's Ryan with Print Play Creations. I have this business with my wife Amanda, and we have a 3D printing business. And on top of selling online, we also sell at local markets. And so this video is going to be a little different than our usual videos, where I'm not just going to be vlogging about our day-to-day activities. In this one, we're actually going to break down what we did well at our last event and what we can improve on, and the kind of the things and ideas that we have going forward for our next event. So hopefully you get some value out of it. Let's get into it.
One thing I think Ryan and I did well at the event was speaking to people, and not just, hey, how are you? And then letting them walk by the booth, but actually talking to people, communicating with people more so than just, hey, how are you? You know, it brought a lot of people in. And I think another thing that we did well was having Bluey there, because she was a great conversation piece. We actually had people come from all the way across the room just to see Bluey, just to have their pictures taken with Bluey with their kids. So that was really awesome. Those were two of the things that we did right, and we'll continue to keep doing at our next event.
And I think the last thing on our list of what we did well is the fact that we engaged with other vendors. Like before the event started, once we got our booth set up, I went over and I started talking to other vendors. Amanda started talking to other vendors, right? We went around, introduced ourselves, looked at their products, talked about the events we've been to, the events we're going to this year, asked them how they're doing, how they're, if they made their products. You can, whatever small talk you want to start. But one of our main questions that we ask is, what other events are you going to this month, next month, this year, whatever? What big events do you have? And so that actually got us 2 big events this year that we were able to apply for and we got into, because it's so early in the year. So I would definitely recommend, if you're not doing it, go ahead and start talking to the vendors. And sometimes they'll tell you, I'll come see your booth or whatever. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't come to your booth. But a lot of times what I found is if you go and talk to them and they, you vibe with them, you talk to them like they're a human being, and then a lot of times they'll come over to your booth, they'll start looking through your stuff, especially the stuff that we make, and go, you know what? My child would love this, or my grandchild would love this, or I love this and I want to put it, on my desk. We've had a lot of vendors come to us and just buy some last minute things at the end of the event or before the event started. I definitely would recommend talking to other vendors, get their email, get their cards, because after you leave this event, you still want to reach out monthly or every other month and say, hey, what events do you have scheduled this month or next month or what? So you can keep going to these events and scale your business more and more.
So one of the things we learned from the show is that we definitely need more signage with pricing on it. Sometimes people don't want to talk, or they're kind of intimidated. They don't want to ask pricing. So we definitely need to consider that so that we are not as limited to how we can group our product. So signage with pricing needs to happen before the next show.
Yeah, and another thing we can improve on is the layout of the table. We had a lot of product, or we had more product than our last event. It wasn't laid out in a very organized way. And so we had like $5 items here, next to $15 items, next to $35 items. And so people were a little confused with the signage, like Amanda said, but also they would see a $5 sign and say, oh, well, this is also $5. Well, no, that's $20. We need to put more thought into how we lay out the table as people are walking in, so that it's more intuitive with the pricing and just kind of flows better. And the other thing, I think we had a 10 by 10 booth, and we went with 3 8-foot tables. And so what that did was we had to put the 8-foot table at the back near the wall, and our 2 8-foot tables went down parallel to each other and perpendicular to the back table. We couldn't sit behind the table. We had to sit kind of off in the corner, and it was kind of awkward. I may invest in a 6-foot table for the smaller booth, so we can actually put the 6-foot table in between the 2 8-foot tables, push it up a little bit, and give us a little room to sit behind, and help bring people in a little more and not look as awkward at the booth. I don't know, just a thought. So another thing that we think we can do better is bringing in the older crowd. Right, we have a lot of parents with kids, grandmothers, people with nieces and nephews that come into our booth, and they're interested in the toys that we have, but they're not really. There's still a lot of adults that just walk by the booth, and ultimately that's fine, right? Because they're not our target audience. However, I do think there is some value in printing things kind of appeal to an older crowd as well. Like, I don't think we need to completely change up our product line, because the toys are what's working for us, right? The articulating dragons, the minis, all the good stuff. All that stuff is working well for us. But I'm trying to come up with ways to, similar to how Bluey brings in the 3D printed Bluey we have and the Spider-Man helmets, the same way that those attract the kids coming in. But if we had something there to appeal to the older crowd, bring them into the booth too. I'm thinking something like wine holders. There's a couple like through STL Flicks that we have access to. I printed off one. I'm probably gonna put some paint on it, a little rub and buff, gold rub and buff or something. And I think if it does well, if it's priced well and it does well, then we can use that to also push higher priced products to the adults. So I'm playing with the idea. I'm just gonna print, one or two off. I'm not gonna go ham on it by any means, but I want to see if we can kind of start appealing to the older crowd and see if we can at least get them into the booth and talking to us, and then maybe go from there, right? If they buy something, great. If not, that's fine too. But ultimately the goal is to just make everybody stop and get into our booth. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm just gonna print 2 or 3 and see kind of how it does. So that's the main points that we, kind of took from this as to what we need to do better, what we can improve on, and what we did well. I think the main thing for us is our setup, right? Our tables, our signs, the organization of the tables themselves, so that people, there's kind of a flow to it when they get into the booth. That's really what we need to work on, outside of just needing more printers. I need more printers so that I can print more things, so that I can take more inventory to the market. So to kind of close the video out, what I wanted to do, I've noticed I've had quite a few people watching that are just starting their business, or they plan to just start their business. And so I wanted to go over some key takeaways that might help you if you're starting out. And this is just strictly from my experience, from mine and Amanda's experience. Take it for a grain of, take it for what it's worth. The main things are, one, you're gonna be nervous, right? Everybody's nervous on their first event, second event, third event. Just do it, right? Just start. You're gonna be fine. And another thing, I just hinted at it earlier, you're going to feel like you don't have enough inventory. For our Christmas event that we went to last month in December, I had started the business like a month and a half before that with one printer. It was an Ender 3, and then I upgraded to another one because it wasn't doing what I wanted. So I upgraded to a Bamboo Labs A1 with the AMS, and then we just got another printer every 2 or 3 weeks from that up to Christmas. So we were printing 24/7. I was getting up in the middle of the night to change prints, to clear the plate and start a new print. I felt like the entire time we did not have enough inventory, but it doesn't matter, because when we got there, we practically sold out of all of our inventory anyway. Nobody noticed that we didn't have that much product. There were vendors there that didn't have as much as we did. They had, clothes out that it was like half of the rack was empty. It's about the type of products you have. And really, I think it's a lot to do with your personality and how you talk to people.
The last tip I have, and probably the biggest tip, is be confident. And that can be hard, because if you're not confident, you've heard fake it until you make it. And that is definitely what you need to do, because when someone comes in your booth and they ask you the price on something and you're kind of wishy-washy and you're like, well, that's $12. If you don't value your product and don't want to stand behind your product and aren't proud of it, why are they going to pay their hard-earned money for your product? So it just doesn't make sense. Whereas if you say $12 and you say it with confidence and like what you're doing, even if you're not too solid on that number or too sure on it, it sounds a lot better to them. So portray confidence, and if you're not, fake that confidence, because they don't know. Chances are you're not going to see most of these people again, right? So they're not going to know if you really are or are not confident, but put it out there that you are. Fake it until you make it, and then you'll start believing it and you will start being more confident. That's my biggest tip, I would say. Be confident.
And I think the last point that I want to leave you with is, don't leave the event early. Both events that we've been to thus far, vendors leave early. We had one at the Christmas event. She left literally 2 hours into the event. 2 hours into the event. She was right next to the door. Now, there were some issues with how the event was set up, and we weren't seeing as many people. So Amanda kind of went out and started corralling people in, dancing around, being her normal jovial self. And when people saw that, they're like, oh, this part over here has booths as well, because we weren't in the main area where the other booths were. Side note, get there early, and that's kind of where we messed up. We got there like 30, 45 minutes before the event started to set up because we were like, this will be quick. And we ended up screwing ourselves over. But she left 2 hours into the event, and everybody was kind of looking at her like, what? Some other people started packing up, and then we started having traffic come in. And we ended up making, obviously it was December, it was Christmas, but we made a ton of sales that day. And I will tell you, 30 minutes before our booth closed, maybe even 20, we had a family come back to our table after they'd already visited once before and bought a decent amount before, came back to our table like 20 minutes before the event was over, and they basically cleared us out. So all these vendors that left early didn't have that opportunity. So I would say if you pay for the event, stay at the event. We had the same thing in this last event in January. People weren't happy with the turnout. Well, it's January, right? January is generally slow in retail right after Christmas. There's not going to be a lot of traffic, but the same thing. We had people coming in as people were leaving the event. So, and that's the other thing. It makes the other vendors, it makes it look like everybody's just packing up when new customers are coming in the door. So it hurts not only you, but it hurts other vendors too. So I would say you paid for the event, stay at the event until, the event's over. So hopefully this was helpful. Maybe you're starting to prepare for your first event, second, third event, whatever. And hopefully you can learn from kind of our mistakes that we made, things that we did well on too. And then maybe you didn't think about something. And it's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So yeah, hopefully you found some value in it. If you liked the video, be sure to smash that like button. If you like the content coming out, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Try to put a video out every week. Some of them are vlogs, some of them are kind of this style video where we go over kind of what we're learning, what we're doing, all that good stuff. So see you in the next video.